There on line 58, there's a definition of candidate and who that would include. Any person that's qualified as a candidate until the time that that person takes office or files a termination report as provided elsewhere in this section. Next on line 62, office holder means any elected or appointed official from the beginning of his or her term until that person no longer holds office. Then we start there in subsection 2 and specifically outline some expenditures that are prohibited under this section. And I'll run through those real quick. Subpart 2A, any residential or household items, supplies, or expenditures, including mortgage, rent, or utility payments for any part of any residential property of a candidate or office holder or a family member of the candidate or office holder. However, this does not include a residence maintained for the purpose of performing official duties at the seat of government. There on line 79, it further specifically prohibits mortgage, rent, or utility payments for any part of any non-residential property of a candidate or office holder or family member of a candidate or office holder that are used for campaign purposes, to the extent the payments exceed the fair market value of the property usage. So you could lease a campaign headquarters for yourself. You just can't pay more than fair market value for it. There on subpart C on line 84 is the funeral, cremation, and burial expense, as we talked about in the amendment before. With the amendment, the bill states funeral, cremation, or burial expenses related to deaths within the family of a candidate or office holder. Those would be prohibited. Subpart D on line 87, clothing other than items of, with the amendment, nominal value that are used for gaining or holding public office or performing the functions and duties of public office. Subpart E, automobiles, except for automobile rental expense and other automobile expense related to gaining or holding public office or performing the functions and duties of public office. Subpart F, tuition payments. G, dues, fees, or gratuities at a country club, health club, or recreational facility, unless they're part of a specific fundraising event that takes place on the premises of the property. Line 98, salary payments to a family member of a candidate unless the family member is providing bona fide services to the campaign. And if you are paying a family member, it has to be at fair market value. Line 103, admission to sporting events, concerts, theater, or other forms of entertainment, unless those are related to gaining or holding public office or performing the functions and duties of public office. Line 107, subpart J, non-documented loans of any type, including loans to candidates, are prohibited. So if it's undocumented, it's prohibited. Subpart K, travel expenses, except for travel expenses of a candidate or office holder for travel undertaken as an ordinary and necessary expense of gaining or holding public office or performing the functions and duties of public office. Subpart 3 there is a general catch-all, and it states, any expense that reasonably relates to gaining or holding public office or performing the functions and duties of public office is a permitted use of campaign contributions. It is the intent of the legislature that such expenditures are not considered personal use expenditures. There on line 131, upon filing a termination report, in other words, when you go to the House, when this is done for you or for any candidate or office holder, any campaign contributions not used to pay for expenses of gaining or holding public office or performing the functions and duties of public office shall be, you can continue to maintain them in your campaign account. You can donate them to a political organization or to a political action committee or to another candidate. You can transfer them in whole or part to a newly established political action committee or a ballot question advocate. You can donate them to a tax-exempt charitable organization. You can donate them to the state of Mississippi, or you can return them to the donors. Subpart 5 there on line 149. Any candidate for public office or any elected official who willfully violates this section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and punished by a fine of $1,000 and a state assessment equal to the amount of the misappropriated campaign contribution. Subpart 6 there, switching gears a little bit, on line 155, states that the Mississippi Ethics Commission shall issue advisory opinions regarding any of the requirements set forth in this section. You would request that in writing. They would prepare and deliver that opinion with reference to the request. And when you rely on that in good faith and follow the direction of the opinion and act in accordance with it, you would be protected. All advisory opinions issued would be made public, and they would be issued within 90 days of the written request. The request of an advisory opinion would be confidential as to the identity of the individual making the request. Section 2 there, starting on line 178, states that it would be unlawful for the governor, lieutenant governor, any member of the legislature, or any candidate for these offices to solicit or receive cash campaign contributions or hold political fundraising events during a regular or special legislative session. In other words, you cannot raise money during session. Section 3, there are several technical and grammatical changes there, singular to plural and some other things. No big changes there. I would note you to line 289 in section 4, which is a change to 2315-803 about political committees. They've got to file a statement of organization. Now I believe it's within 10 days, and this legislation would change that to within 48 hours after receipt of contributions in excess of $200 or expenditures in excess of $200. In other words, not 10 days, but now within 48 hours. The fine for political committees who violate these is $5,000 per violation. And of course, that would also be governed by the Mississippi Ethics Commission. If you would skip over to line 442, this is the credit card language, and I'll read here verbatim. It says, disclosure required under this section of an expenditure to a credit card issuer, financial institution, or business allowing payments and money transfers to be made over the internet must include, by way of detail or separate entry, the amount of funds passing to each person, business entity, or organization receiving funds from the expenditure. In other words, you will itemize a credit card payment and what those funds went to. The next portion of the bill there in section 7 states there on line 488, any candidate or other person who willfully violates the provisions and prohibitions of this article shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction. And that also brings in, at that point, the Mississippi Ethics Commission, a statement or report by an action in the nature of a mandamus brought by the Mississippi Ethics Commission. In other words, that's who and where this will be governed by. You will still make your reporting requirements to the Secretary of State, just as you've always done. Secretary of State would furnish a list to the Ethics Commission of delinquent filers, folks who have not filed, and they would, that's what it states on line 531. That list would be provided to the Mississippi Ethics Commission.